morning. Okay, so let's bring up our text for today. All right, we've had an opportunity to look at this halacha before. Happy Hanukkah, everybody. We've had an opportunity to look at this halacha before when we were learning about the position today of modern day poskim on how we look at Jews who are not religious in their personal observance. And remember, we saw the Chazon Ish, who told us that today Jews do, even Jews who are not observant, do not, the halachas that we see in the Shulchan Aruch about people who are Jews who are idolatrous and Machal Shabbos and so forth, the halachas of distancing ourselves from them do not apply today. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I think we saw it. Let me just see. Let's see here. We called that a mumar, and ches. That's right. It's the Chazon Ish who said that Elu shalohit chanchu mekatnutam b'derech haTorah, that those who have not been educated from their youth in the ways of the Torah, arehem anusim, these people are called anusim. These are people who it's like they were forced into a life of irreligiosity. Umetzuvim anu lahachiotam, and we are obligated to support them. V'le'ehov otam ke'echad miYisrael, and to love them like any other Jew. Okay, that's the Chazon Ish. So keep that in mind when we learn this halacha. Okay, he says v'Yisrael ha'oved avodah zara o mechal shabbosos b'ferhesia. If an Israelite, a Jew, is an idol worshiper, he's converted to, let's say, another faith, or he desecrates Shabbos publicly and flagrantly, Shadino Kimumar, he Lechol HaTorah Kula, and therefore he has the status of someone who violates the entire Torah. Eno Bichlal Achicha, he is no longer considered to be your brother, halachically. Vidino Sha'asr Lahachzir Lo Aveda, and you therefore may not return his lost item. And when we said you may not return his lost item, so he reverts back to the status of a Gentile. If he's wicked, right, because he's like a bad person, because his idolatrous ways bring him to commit acts of evil, so then you cannot return his lost item. Remember, you have to think back to, you can think about the story of Hanukkah. I'm going to actually speak about that this morning. The whole story of Hanukkah is about Hellenized Jews who really were the ones who instigated Antiochus to defile the temple, right? So those are the wicked kind of people that we're talking about. But those people don't exist anymore today. V'chein ha'apikorsim, and the same thing is true about an apikores. This word apikoros actually has its origin is of Greek origin from the word Epicurus, who was a Greek philosopher. But at least that's the way some understand it. Basically, followers of Greek philosophy. Vehem hakofrim. These are people who deny the Torah uvinavua mi Yisrael. They deny the authenticity of Torah as being the word of God. They deny the legitimacy of prophecy of God communicating with man. And as the Imrei Yaakov says, this apikorsim, he says, Ushlosha hein hanikroim apikorsim. There are three people that the Rambam identify as an apikoros. Omer she'ein sham nevua klal ve'ein sham madash shemagia mehabori l'leif b'nei adam. Category number one is a person who says there's no such thing as prophecy or God communicating knowledge to man. Second category is Bahamakchish Nevuaso Shel Moshe Rabbeinu. If a person believes in prophecy, but they deny the authenticity of Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy. And the third category is V'ha'omer She'ein Habore Yodeya Ma'aseh B'nei Ha'adam, or a person who says that God is not omniscient, is not aware of what human beings are doing. Kol Echad Mishloshe Elu Hu Apikoros. These are all apikoros. And okay, and therefore, okay, v'chein hamumer l'chol Torah kula o ruba chutz michel Shabbos v'avodah zara, and the same thing would apply to a Jew who violates the majority of the Torah, even though he's shomer Shabbos. Okay, aval hamumer lemiktzas mitzvahs. I mean, I could just imagine going, interviewing this guy for a shidduch. Oh, so what's your level of observance? Well, I'm Shomer Shabbos, but I violate the rest of the Torah. I'm not sure if that category even exists. But anyway, Avol Hamumar Lemixas HaMitzvos. But if a person has a weak spot for specific observances, Kagon, Ochel Nevelos L'Teyavam. For example, every time he passes McDonald's, he just can't hold himself back. He just has this weakness for a Big Mac, but in all other respects, he's totally Shabbos observant. He totally observes. He wears tzitzis, wears a yarmulke, puts on tefillin every day. He just can't help himself. Over sha'ar averos l'teyavon v'lo lahachis, or any other mitzvah that he violates because of a weakness. Right? But he does not doing it because he's upset with God or he doesn't believe in God. He says, because because if you do an avera just to provoke God, or because you don't believe in God, then you become a complete outside of the pale. But here's a guy who just regularly commits averas, not out of any religious doctrinal reasons, but just because he's a weak person. So in this kind of scenario, the halacha is mitzvah lahachzir avedasa. Then you have a mitzvah to return his lost items. And by the way, that category does exist. Unfortunately, you have many people who talk the talk, right, as we say, but they don't always walk the walk. These are people who can dress very, very religious and talk very, very religious, but they lead sometimes a double life. And we all know of such people. I guess I, as a rabbi, know of such people even more, of people who, who very, very quietly will go to massage parlors and things like that. Anyway, mitzvah lahachzir aveda. So it is a mitzvah to return his lost item. Shenamar, as it says, l'chol avedas achicha, as it says that there's a mitzvah to return the lost item of your brother. And I guess your brother comes to include l'rabos es hamumer lemixas haTorah. This comes to include a person who occasionally sins out of weakness for a certain behavior, not out of any theological reason. V'hamosur im sarach lahachzilo avedasu yisboer behilchos nizkei mama. Now, what about a masur? Now, a masur is a very interesting word because it means literally an informant. And we pray about such people in our Shemona Esrei every day. When we say the bracha of Vilam al Shinim al Tihi Tikva, that for the slanderers, may there be no hope. Okay? And this was a big issue back in the day of our sages when there were Jews who not only became non-observant Jews, or became Jews who, let's say, may not have been totally committed to the Jewish community, but they also may have, for personal gain, decided to become informants against the Jewish community. In order to curry favor with the government, they would snitch on certain Jews who were hiding assets as a way of protecting them so that they wouldn't have to pay outlandish taxes on their assets. This was when Jews were being persecuted as an underclass within society. They were having items of theirs confiscated unfairly simply because they were Jews and were not protected by the law. And if a Jew went ahead and told a government official that my Jewish neighbor is hiding assets under the floorboards of his barn, the authorities would come. They could not only confiscate this person's assets, but then they would arrest the person, throw him in the dungeon, and throw away the key, and you'd never see the guy ever again. Okay, so on that basis, the Gemara talks about the permissibility of actually killing a masur, because a masur is considered to be a rodef. He's trying to destroy a person's life and actually get a person killed with the government authorities, and therefore you're allowed to even kill him as a preemptive protection. But that category of person does not exist in Western civilization today in the modern world because we have laws. And people use the term masur inappropriately today to describe any person who implicates another Jew for having committed a crime. And today, this law doesn't really apply. If you know a Jew is illegally selling drugs from his house in Thornhill, then not only are you not a masur if you call the authorities, but you're doing a mitzvah by eliminating illegal drugs from your neighborhood. You're not called a masur. There's a lot of misconception about this today, that I'm not allowed to snitch on my fellow Jew, but this term of a masur existed in the times of the Rav Shulchan Aruch because there was a lot of anti-Semitism among governmental authorities, and even in the lifetime of the Rav Shulchan Aruch himself, he spent time in prison because of misnagdim who were against the Baal HaTanya himself, the author of this text, for having proliferated and spreading Hasidic teachings. So you have to realize the world has changed a lot since this was written. But we'll take a look at the Imrei Yaakov in Kuf Nun Zayin.
Rabbi, could one say, I mean, obviously subject to a lot of interpretation still, but during the Holocaust, there may have been situations.
Yeah, during the Holocaust, there certainly may have been situations where if a Jew would act as an informant where other Jews were hiding, that person is a masur. Mitzvah to kill that person before they do any more damage. Absolutely. A capo. Capos were many times very, very cruel Jews who would get their fellow Jews in trouble or get them killed. So your point is well taken. Yes. Thankfully.
Behind the Iron Curtain.
Or behind the Iron Curtain also.
Yeah. We'd love to say all these issues are in the depths of history, but unfortunately, when situations arise, these human characters still come out.
Yes, correct. Yeah, yes. Okay. Imrei Yaakov Hamumar L'chol HaTorah Kosov HaTavua Shor D'chol She'over L'Ta'avasa Al Kol Averos Habos Liyado. That if a person truly has a weak spot for all Averos, in other words, whenever an opportunity arrives for him to indulge himself in any kind of pleasure, he disregards the Torah. Even though he's not theologically opposed to Judaism, but he's just a weak person as far as being able to have self-control, and that's witnessed by the fact that he doesn't worship idolatry. It's not like he is religiously committed to something else, and it's not like he violates Shabbos regularly. It's just that he can't help himself. Mikol makom kaven shenira shaparak mimenu ol kol mitzvos ariu kenachar. But the fact that he just disregards observance in general means that he's like a Gentile now. The Imra uhu oved b'mezid al shalosh averos mefursamos shaholam nizarim bahem. That if you see him violate 3 averas publicly, that all other Jews are careful about, kagon ochel nevela. So, for example, you see him eating treif, belova shatnez deoraisa, and he wears shatnez, wool and linen mixed together. The Hekif Ba'as Rosho, and he gets a haircut from the local barber who cuts off shaves his hair above the above the cheekbone, right? So just like stuff, right? Stuff that he does. So have a chazaka l'kulu. So then you can assume that he's a violator of the Torah. The Amrinan Mistama Parak Mimenu Ol HaMitzvahs Kulan, and therefore we assume that he is shirked off of himself the yoke of all of the commandments. Okay. All right. And that's really all we need to see for this halacha today. Because as we mentioned, the Chazon Ish says that today these halachas don't apply. A Jew is a Jew is a Jew, unless, there may be a rare breed of Jew today who went through the entire yeshiva system. I actually know a guy who was a former colleague of mine. He was an Orthodox rabbi. He worked in a pulpit, and today he doesn't believe in God, and he has a blog where he divorced his wife and moved to another city, and just basically says, that's it, I've changed my whole belief system. It's very sobering because no one's immune. As the Mishnah says, al tamin ba'atzmacha ad yom motecha, don't have trust in yourself, don't believe in yourself that you'll never falter, because every day is a new challenge. Every day presents a different challenge. So I've often wondered, what about this fellow or other people like him who are very, very steeped in their education, and because of the allure of secularism and agnosticism and atheism and all of these other isms, a person just basically leaves the faith. I still feel that in today's world, we're living in such a confusing world where it's so difficult for people to get clarity. And it's not like in the old days where people were sheltered in their worlds, in their communities, but we're constantly bombarded with external information. What can I tell you? I still have a soft spot for all of these people, and I think we have to halachically as well have a soft spot for everybody.
Rabbi, I had a philosophical question for you on this whole topic. So these individuals, let's say, who are actively, like the topic going against the Jewish people, doing harm to the Jewish people, let's say even in the Holocaust, capos, etc. We have concepts that all Jews are we're all part of the same family. We have to love every Jew, etc. So how do we reconcile these things? If you have somebody who's actively trying to harm the Jewish people, we'll call it an anti-Semitic Jew. Like, for example, like today, I don't know how much you know about him, but this guy, George Soros, who funds all kinds of anti-Israel, anti-American things, and he's a Jew, and he's known as a Jew. He's a halachic Jew, to the best of my knowledge, but he's actively harming, and causing, terrible things to the Jewish people, including death and despair, etc.
Well, first of all, you have to be careful about a guy like George Soros. I don't know what's fact and what's fiction about him. I think that there's so much propaganda that's circulating today that I'm relatively agnostic about one individual who's trying his best to conceal himself from the public view. I don't know how much of this is made up about him or not. But if you could verify that a person is actually wreaking havoc and mayhem against the Jewish people and their interests, trying to bring down the state of Israel, trying to put Jews in danger. So then there's a mitzvah to do whatever you can to stop that person, and that person would be excluded from the category of the Jewish people. There is a story about Matisyahu that we talk about in our prayers. B'mei Matisyahu ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol Chashmonai. Mattathias was the father of Judas Maccabeus, and the story of how the Chashmonaim got started is that it's related. The story is related in the book of Maccabees and also in the book of Josephus. And I'm just reading to you from the text itself. After the Seleucid persecutions the Greek persecutions began against the Jews, Mattathias, he himself was not the high priest. His father Yochanan had been the Kohen Gadol many years before, but Matisyahu was a regular Kohen, and he returned to Modi'in in 167 BCE. When asked by a Seleucid Greek government representative under Emperor Antiochus Epiphanes to offer sacrifice to the Greek gods, he not only refused to do so, but slew with his own hand the Jew who had stepped forward to do. He then killed the government official that required the act. And as the book of Maccabees records, that Matisyahu himself said, "Let everyone who has zeal for the law and who stands by the covenant follow me." Under the edict for his arrest, he took refuge in the wilderness of Judea with his 5 sons and called upon all the Jews to follow him. Many eventually responded to his call. Mattathias then disappears from historical record. He probably died circa 166 BCE, just a year after this all took place. But Matisyahu was really the catalyst, because he killed a Jew and the government official who was trying to coerce him to offer a sacrifice to the Greek gods. So, I mean, this is very timely, this halacha, because this is what was going on back in the day. And what was the correct reaction to this? The correct reaction was to not be tolerant of any Jew or non-Jew who was trying to subvert the national religion of the Jewish people. But what about all of the other Jews who were Hellenized? We don't find anything in the Hanukkah story about the importance of distancing ourselves from other Jews. It's only those Jews who were actively involved in trying to subvert the faith of the Jewish people and to defile the temple. But there was a whole. This was a very dark period in Jewish history, because this is a holiday that commemorates a time when a huge segment of the Jewish population was leaving Yiddishkeit, and we don't really talk about that very much. we assign the blame to the Greeks, but we don't talk about the history of the fact that it was our own people who had assimilated, and that's not part of this Hanukkah celebration. Let's celebrate how many of those assimilated Hellenized Jews are no longer part of the Jewish people. That's not what we're celebrating. So this is a very timely discussion for what we're actually celebrating. What we're celebrating is that the whole Hanukkah story is framed as, look at this terrible external influence that threatened the future of the Jewish people. Not look at all those terrible Jews who left Yiddishkeit, right? And we point the finger. When we point the finger at our enemies, we never point at ourselves. We always point at the external culture that is responsible for this. And I think that's one of the subtexts of Hanukkah. It's actually going to be my drasha for this morning that I'll record later this morning, which is that it's wrong to segregate ourselves from our non-observant brethren. If anything, that's the subtext of the message of Hanukkah. We can point at the secular culture and lament the fact that it's having a negative influence upon us. We should not be pointing the finger at any group of Jews who have succumbed to that external culture. Individual Jews who are villainous, right? Let's assume, for argument's sake, that you're right, Alan, that George Soros is a horrible person who hates Jews, even though he himself may have been born a Jew. So you've had those people throughout Jewish history. Yeah, of course, those people should be eliminated, and we should do whatever we can. That's a true Musar. That's the Musar that we're talking about, right? But those people are very far and few in between.
Rabbi, aren't there huge numbers of liberal Jews who support causes that aren't good for the Jewish people?
Like, let's say, the Jews of J Street and so forth. These are very misguided people. I know some of them. They're people that I have a lot of affection for, because my parents, my dad's best friend for decades is a guy who just recently passed away, and he and his wife were liberals and Democrats and card-carrying J Street people, and supported every movement that you and I would recoil from, right? But they're good people. They're just misguided, because politics sometimes blinds you to what you feel. I'm sure that their belief is that this is in the Jewish people's best interests to bring down the Netanyahu government and to install in Israel a much more benevolent and government that will embrace the Arabs, and everyone will hold hands and sing songs around the campfire, and everyone will do a kumbaya, and we'll all be just one happy family of man, and we'll turn our swords into plowshares, and the Arabs will do this as well. Listen, that's a great dream, but it's not real. And when you dream about things that are not real, and you don't watch reality, you're going to end up getting stabbed in the back very quickly. But that doesn't make them bad people. It just makes them very misguided people. So,
Rabbi, couldn't you argue? See, I would argue differently. A group like J Street is actually it's not just we just have a different philosophy. They support things, whether you call them misguided or whatever, but that actually causes harm to the Jewish people.
yes,
Like, there's a difference between liberals and left. J Street is an extreme leftist organization.
Yeah, they have to be opposed at every juncture. But if a person is a member of J Street and supports their work, you have to look at the individual Jew.
But if I support an organization that is going to kill Jews or harm Jews, doesn't that by definition make me not exactly the best person?
No, it doesn't. And we have to be very careful about how far we extend and by association. That's a serious problem. Is that if you incriminate by association because a person has a misguided ideology, so then no, you just because he donates $100 a year to J Street does not make him into a villain.
Okay, so let me ask you, I'm sorry to challenge you on this, but let's say I'm a frum Jew, I keep everything, but I support the Ku Klux Klan, or, I give donations. Does that, I'm a good Jew still?
No, it's, let's talk, but let's talk about a real example, okay? Let's talk about Naturi Karta.
Yeah, so let's say I give $1,000 donation every year to Naturi Karta, but I'm observant and I'm a good guy and give tzedakah. Like I do all the good things in the world.
These are my aunts and uncles and cousins. They literally. I'm not telling you. I'm not speaking figuratively now. Literally, my own flesh and blood. Right? These are all very, very misguided people. But these are also the people that would be prepared if you were in the hospital. They would come over with a bowl of chicken soup to make sure that you are comfortable in the hospital. These are good people that are extremely ideologically misguided. They have no idea what the state of Israel means. And I can tell that to you from firsthand knowledge. They've been fed propaganda their entire lives. And therefore, only the real crazies, the dozen or so who will actually go to Iran and try to subvert the state of Israel are the ones that have to be actively opposed. But the tens of thousands of Satmar Hasidim who will actively demonstrate against the state of Israel by, let's say, and badmouth the government of Israel, these are just ideologically misguided people. Rabbi Isai, davening is at 7:20 this morning, so we'll hold it here. Just remember what the story of Hanukkah is about. Okay, have a great Shabbos and a Hanukkah Sameach, a Freilich and Hanukkah.